Okay, so I know it's been a minute, but I wanted to come back with a pretty hard-hitting topic, and that is how strong is Grimmjow from Bleach. Now, it's no secret that Grimmjow is my favorite character in Bleach and in possibly all of anime. I'll have another video in the works right now, currently talking about why this is my favorite character in anime. Now, how strong is Grimmjow? Now, we have seen topics like this before from other YouTubers, but this one I wanted to go over how strong I am able to get Grimmjow. And I'm able to get Grimmjow on the same level as true Shikai Ichigo. Possibly true Bankai without the horn. Now, I know this is a pretty hard-hitting topic the moment in the video, and I know a lot of people, instant conclusion is jumping to Camp Freon World, a certain page from Camp Freon World, which I will be addressing later in the video. Now, Grimmjow is a pretty interesting character when it comes to power, because there seems to be a misconception that Grimmjow will say something and immediately people think, oh, he's saying it because it's bravado. He's saying it because that's in character. When in actuality, Grimmjow has a lot of instances where he knows he can't win a fight against certain people. You have this scene with Ukiura where he knows he can't beat Ukiura and he wants to fight Ichigo, so what does he do? Sticks him in a different dimension because he knows he can't beat him. We have the scene where he knows he can't fight Aizen, so instantly he gets put on his knees. We do have the statement from Camp Freon World itself, the one I was talking about, where he talks about how he can't fight Baragon, nor can he fight Aizen, and he can't win against either of them. Now, this is important because the stuff that I have could get Grimmjow to true Shikai level. Now, I do want to go over Grimmjow scaling in 1000 Year Blood War, but before I do that, I want to go over the different arcs. Now, Grimmjow's first appearance is in the Arrancar arc, very early on in the arc, after Ukiura and Yami show up, and we see Grimmjow already is extremely powerful. He tanks a hit from Shikai Ichigo, then he proceeds to manhandle Bankai Ichigo, and it is a pretty great spectacle, especially when you realize that Grimmjow berates Ichigo's Bankai. We know that Ichigo crafted his Bankai for speed and power, and Grimmjow proceeds to just say, like, you have average speed at best. This is all your Bankai does is increase it, and it's not even that good. And Ichigo hits him with the Getsuga Tensho that actually burns and scars Grimmjow, which is pretty impressive because we know Getsuga Tensho is Ichigo's strongest attack, and even if Ichigo is weaker than his opponent, it can still damage his opponent. Now, before the fight can continue, Tozen does step in and stop Grimmjow. And that brings us to round 2, during the Arrancar arc, where it is a heavily weakened Grimmjow. He's missing an arm, and we know in Bleach when you're missing an arm, your power drops pretty significantly. We can't put a number on it, but it does drop pretty significantly. And this same Grimmjow, who has one arm, probably half his power, is able to go toe-to-toe with a masked Ichigo, able to block attacks, able to do all this, but he does get damaged. He does get hit with another Getsuga Tensho that makes him bloodied and just overall very fatigued, and he is not at 100% anymore. Then Ichigo's mask breaks, and this Grimmjow dog walks him again, starts kicking him all around Katakota Town, and stomps him, and almost kills him. But Rukia comes in and saves him last second, and freezes him in ice, but then he immediately breaks out. And that's when we get kind of interesting with Grimmjow's power here. You see, Shinji comes in. And he puts on the mask in base, which a mask can be 5 to 10 times from base power. And Grimmjow is able to, I wouldn't say hold his own, but shows enough relativity to block his attacks and even tank a Sero from this Shinji. But Grimmjow does fare and assume that he needs to go into his resurrection to fight this Shinji, but Ukiura stops him. And it's very unfortunate that we don't really see Grimmjow have a good matchup in the series, because his first 2 fights he dog walks, then he gets dog walked himself by Shinji. Then in round 3 of Ichigo versus Grimmjow, Ichigo's holding back because he wants to enjoy the fight. He's letting Grimmjow have a good fight, and he's just trying to enjoy the fight because the Hollow is taking over. And we do see a good back and forth from the both of them. In fact, we see a lot of the fight, Grimmjow is on top. We see Grimmjow hit Ichigo with the Grande Sero. which the Grand Reisero even distorted space around it after he shot it out. So Ichigo blocks it, he starts laughing and goes to his resurrection. But during the fight, Orihime does scream for Ichigo to not get hurt anymore, and that's when Ichigo stops holding back and he does one-shot Grimmjow. It is very unfortunate, but he one-shots him, and then Grimmjow does his strongest attack, and Ichigo just cleaves through it. He stops holding back, so Grimmjow doesn't really get a good, clean fight here either, because Ichigo's holding back the entire time, and then we know he gets blindsided by Noritora. Now, it might seem the gap between 6 and 5 is massive, but you gotta remember, this is a weakened Ichigo and fighting Noritora, and then Grimmjow, who is significantly weakened, also gets one-shotted. And we don't see Grimmjow after that at all, which is very unfortunate because Grimmjow is, again, a really good character that Kubo wrote, and my favorite character in Bleach, and I really think we should have saw more of him. I do hope in the upcoming 1,000 Year Blood War Core 2, I think that's when Grimmjow should appear, is in Core 2. I do want to see more scenes of Grimmjow, because the amount of scenes I'm working with here, while not a lot, still gives enough for his power and where he goes on in strength. And I do want to get into that. So, we know in Bleach there is the Reiatsu rule. Now, if you don't know what this is, I can go over it. We know in Bleach that your Reiatsu has to be at least somewhat relative to even be considered a threat to your opponent. We see this with Aizen when Soifun does her 2-tap and it doesn't work. We see this with Ichigo when he goes to cut Kenpachi and Kenpachi's Reiatsu just completely overwhelmed his. We know if you're so much stronger than your opponent might as well be an ant. Irrelevant to you, to the point where you're in a different ballpark. Now, which is interesting because Grimmjow, when he first shows up in 1,000 Year Blood War, right, attacks Ichigo. This same Ichigo who is in True Shikai, who is above or equal to Mugetsu, a True Shikai that is able to fight Yuha and give him a couple of attacks and hold his own before he goes into Horn of Salvation. Grimmjow shows up and does a swing, and Ichigo from that shockwave feels so much just threat by the shockwave itself that he goes out of his way to grab his sword. He goes out of his way to grab his sword and block it. And Grimmjow sees this True Shikai Ichigo, a True Shikai Ichigo who is above anybody in the series at this point, and says, as if I could die without killing you first. I've waited all this time so I could get some payback. Now, it is true that Grimmjow does have a grudge match. Now, it is true that Grimmjow does have a grudge with Ichigo, to the point it blinds him from his rational thinking. But I still think Grimmjow, even if you have his rational thinking blinded, I think he would understand if he can't take Ichigo on. I don't think it's a matter of, oh, well, I want to fight him. I know he's stronger, but, I'm going to fight him anyway. I don't think that's with Grimmjow here. I think he knows he might have a chance against Ichigo while in True Shikai, base to base. Which is interesting, because this True Shikai, moments ago, we saw him blitz the 5 Quincy girls. Now, which is crazy, because these 5 Quincy girls were beating Kenpachi. Now, it was a weakened Kenpachi with an eye patch, but they were still beating Kenpachi. These 5 Quincy girls are really impressive because that Baz B didn't think he could take them on at the same time. And this Ichigo manhandles them. Just absolutely throws them around, dog walks them. Absolutely crazy, right? And then we see Grimmjow thinks he can take on this Ichigo. An Ichigo that has to block his attack. And then to make it even worse, Askin's able to put down True Shikai Ichigo with his poison, which shows some relativity there. Or, if you want to say, you do show some relativity there, but the problem is Askin's able to paralyze an opponent regardless. But we do know Askin has to have some relativity either to put down Ichigo. And this same Askin who's in Volstandig, Grimmjow one-shots, which he would have to have some sort of relativity to even be able to get him in the first place. It's really interesting because this Grimmjow, like I said, goes from not being able to take on a Master Ichigo to now True Shikai level. Now, again, I know what I mentioned at the start of the video. I know what you're thinking. But, Vogan, there is a page in Camp Fairy World that says Grimmjow can't even take on Baragon. Are you really telling me Baragon's True Shikai? No, absolutely not. That would be a ridiculous claim. I would never, ever in a million years even begin to try to even argue that. But I will argue that I don't think it's Baragon he's worried about. I think it's his ability. Now, the reason this is because in the Spirits Are Forever With You light novels, there's a character called Roka. Now, Roka, if you don't remember, is the character that Yami one-shots in the head when he's getting healed. This character can copy abilities as long as she's studied them. There's 2 abilities she can't copy. She can't copy Baragon's ability to the fullest, and she can't copy any ability that requires the Hogyoku. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Baragon's ability she can't copy. She's simply not strong enough. I would agree if it wasn't for the fact in this novel, she does copy Mugetsu. That's right, Mugetsu, the ability that one-shots Aizen. The ability that is considered so high up that it takes till Ichigo's final form to even match it in the series. She copies Mugetsu. To read out the passage from Spirits Are Forever With You, here's what it says. Cien tells Roka to stop. Using an attack like this while not being its rightful owner would have severe consequences on her as well. She knows that. She knows she has no right to use his power, a power which Kurosaki Ichigo had gained after overcoming despair again and again. Her body might crumble, but she can't think of any other way to defeat Cien. She can't replicate Aizen's powers without the Hogyoku, and she can't properly replicate the Hogyoku or things like Baragon's curse with just her threads. Her threads turn black, a black sword grows in her hand, part of her arm ruptures. She can't handle this much power. Her neck, her legs, her organs, her body is losing. She's bleeding all over, but she swings the blade. She doesn't utter its name. She unfairly snatched the boy's technique. That's why, at least, she won't lay her fingers on its name. The dark night of Wakamundo gets enveloped by an even darker shadow. Now, she doesn't copy it flawlessly, of course. In the novel, it says her body's ripping apart, blood is everywhere. But the fact that she can copy that and not Baragon's ability leads me to believe that Baragon's ability is a unique thing that only he himself has, which is really interesting because that would mean his ability might actually ignore the Reiatsu rule because of how otherworldly it is. For the sake of conversation, I'm going to say it's the ability that Grimmjow is afraid of because of the weirdness that it has that Mugetsu can be copied, but it hasn't. You could also say that it's Prime Baragon he's afraid of, but while making this video, I could not find any scan or any panel or anything from an episode that says that Baragon got weakened over the years. If you can find that for me, I would like to know down in the comments where it is located. And then for the Aizen one, now you can say that it is a base Aizen from a Rankar arc, but I would say it's actually 1000-Year Blood War. I feel like Grimmjow would know Aizen's strength now, especially because he was in the battle of 1000-Year Blood War, so he would be able to feel Aizen's Reiatsu. Now, I do agree that Aizen is stronger than Ichigo. Not only this, but if you argue that Ichigo is stronger than Aizen, it would be Ichigo with Horn of Salvation and Bankai, which I don't think Grimmjow gets to. I think Grimmjow only gets to True Shikai, or heavily argued, you can get Grimmjow to True Bankai without the Horn, because Resurrection's a 10 times, and then a Bankai is a 10 times. Now, of course, this is only if the Bankai... Now, of course, this is assuming Ichigo's True Bankai, his peak of the peak, is only a 10, which I find really hard to believe. So I'd only like to argue that he's True Shikai level at best, which is completely okay, because I do think Aizen is stronger than True Shikai. I don't think he's weaker than any form Ichigo shows besides Horn of Salvation and Bankai combination, but we don't see a lot of it because it instantly gets destroyed. So I like to think it is a nice argument to have that you could possibly get Grimmjow this high, which is pretty impressive considering that Grimmjow, again, like I said, his best fight in the series, he's getting like equally matched against the Ichigo that's holding back, which is really impressive by Grimmjow's part. There is a line that I find really impressive in Camp Fiona World, which we'll be putting up on the screen now, that says that right now, in Wakamundo, if you know, Halibel is the queen. Grimmjow has no intention of becoming king. That's his whole character arc in Camp Fiona World. He lost the ambition. There's a line that says that Halibel is even afraid of Grimmjow getting this ambition to become king back, which you can have as an implication that she's scared of his power, which is reinforcing the idea that numbers don't matter anymore, because Grimmjow says to Neliel that numbers doesn't matter. Aizen's not here anymore because Neliel still calls him number 6. which would again Grimmjow putting above Nelliel because he's confident he can take her because the numbers doesn't matter anymore. Because if the numbers don't matter, then power system doesn't matter. They're not ranked by the number anymore. And I think there's a lot of evidence to argue Grimmjow true Shikai level, which is really impressive because, like I said, Grimmjow is a very underwhelming character in terms of power in Bleach. And when you look at all the things, it's really interesting putting him on that level. And that's all I have for today. I will make a video on other character powers in Bleach and potentially other characters in other series, but I don't think I'm going to do them often. I don't want to become a channel talking about power, like character power, because I don't want a response video made, because that could lead to a whole rabbit hole of going back and forth with this person. But I feel like there could be an interesting conversation to have with a lot of people, and I also feel that talking about a character's power is sometimes subjective, while a lot of times it is objective. So getting this conclusion doesn't really mean Grimmjow is objectively true Shikai level. I just feel it can be argued, and I will argue it because there's a lot of evidence pointing towards that. But I think that's all for this video. It's long enough as it is. There's not a lot to talk about. I will be making a next video that is things I want changed or we'll see in 1000 Year Blood War, because of the anime is currently out. We're almost on episode 4, and that'll be it. I'll catch you all next time.